All right, good afternoon. We're going to switch it around a little bit now. We're going to talk about what's happening in the ecosystem. We heard a lot about this morning in terms of the private and the public partnership to solve some of the pressing needs. We listened from the panel in terms of some of the priorities that different enterprises are facing. We heard from Rachel on the other side, right? Like what goes into the hacker's mind. With me, I have the pleasure of having Phil Montgomery. Phil, do you want to introduce yourself pretty quickly?
Yes, I'm Phil Montgomery. I'm the general manager of the Microsoft Security go-to-market. I'm based here in Silicon Valley. I seem to have picked up a funny accent. Yeah, my voice is croaky. I'm from Australia originally, and I loved Rachel's talk. Before we go further, I just wanted to say that I get spearphished all the time being in the security business. And once they turned my LinkedIn profile into Cyrillic, into Russian, and I think that was a warning. So I love what she said. I do not have a Twitter account. I do not have an Instagram account. I do not have a Facebook account. I have a LinkedIn account for work, but I really loved her advice about nothing personal on the work machine. So my Microsoft laptop, I do not touch anything personal on that. I do not access email. I don't browse the web. I have a small little personal machine that I travel with, and I think that was just fantastic advice. And we've really got to keep our eyes open. But I'm super enjoying the event.
Yep. No, thank you, Phil. So Microsoft, let's begin with. You're the largest security vendor on the planet, arguably, and in your capacity, you get to talk to the business leaders, a lot of CISOs around the world. Let's start at the 30,000-foot level. What is top of mind for the CISOs these days? What are some of the major trends and market views that you see when you talk to those folks?
Yeah, that's a really good place to start, and I think you covered a lot of what CISOs are concerned about. Where I like to start is that why are we in this situation? And I think the trends are cybersecurity is different than any other form of IT because there's a motivated human being at the other end. It is a form of warfare. And I really liked the opening discussion because other kinds of warfare, the government owns the infrastructure. Like if somebody attacks the infrastructure, the government owns it. With cybersecurity, private enterprise owns most of the internet, and private industry has to take a big part in it. So I think what's top of mind is how do we make the world a better place? And one of the reasons I joined Microsoft is that Brad Smith, our president, works with the White House, he's working with governments around the world, and we're collaborating with our competitors. We collaborate with Google, with Amazon, with Mandiant, with other people. We're working to improve the situation. And I think what's top of mind with CISOs is we need a solution to this. It can't keep going on. And the solution's got to come from governments working together. And that's what's really, really important. And that's why I joined Microsoft. We announced we're going to invest $20 billion in cybersecurity in the next 5 years. We've brought a whole lot of new people into the company. And the mission we're driven by is let's make the world a better place. But I really want to emphasize that security is a team sport. It's used all the time, and we will work with partners, we'll work with competitors, we will work with governments, we'll work with everybody to make the world a better place. And that's what the CISOs want.
Yeah, and I want to double click on that, Phil. So we heard a lot about the public-private partnership, where the idea was to bring in a collaborative effort between the two entities. Microsoft is so ubiquitous, not just in security, but just in infrastructure in general. And the company has almost catapulted into the cloud side of the infrastructure as well. So when you talk about ecosystem partnership, what is the principle at Microsoft? And I would like you to touch on maybe the Misa program as well, maybe just sharing the whole idea of how you think about bringing in a holistic security approach, because these problems are pretty massive, and it just takes a village to go solve for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll zero in on security, seeing we're here at the RSA show. When we talk about ecosystem, it's really important, first of all, to support multi-cloud, multi-platform. So I'm going to start from that aspect. So, we have tools that, give you cloud security posture across Amazon, across Google. We support multi-operating systems on the endpoint. In fact, I was talking to our CISO, Brett Arsenault, yesterday. He supports 31 different operating systems and versions internally, and he said that Microsoft is the second largest Apple Macintosh deployment in the world. So, you know, we are a very diverse environment, and I know where you want me to go with ecosystem though. Like, we can't do it alone. We need partners out there innovating, and that's really the history of Microsoft, is that we have a fantastic set of partners, whether they're ISV partners, whether they're MSSP partners, whether they're our channel partners, whether they're consulting partners. You know, we can't solve this alone. We need to work together with a strong ecosystem. So we created a program, it's called the Misa Program, the Microsoft Intelligent Security Association. To be in the program, you need to be using or extending one of our security technologies. After a few years, we have about 300 partners that are in the program, and we want to continue expanding it. And we want partners to find gaps. We want them to innovate. We want them to add to our solutions, because we're delivering a platform, whether it's a cloud platform, whether it's the work productivity platform in Microsoft 365.
And I can definitely, on the behalf of Microsoft and the Armor Blocks partnership, I can vouch for it, which is, when we look at the different infrastructure that's available, one of the key value adds that we bring in is because of the capabilities that we are able to integrate with the Microsoft ecosystem. So I know when Scott, you touched on from Fidelity's perspective, and you think about advising the clients, a lot of it stems from the fact that it's hard enough to understand the footprint of the risk, and let alone how you go about mitigating it. And the only way you can do it is if you have an open system and open architecture that allows you to make sure that one is talking well with the other. Let's go back to the comment that you made, which is you talked about the multi-cloud and the fact that as the world kind of evolves into a cloud-based architecture, definitely we are talking about digital communications here. And I think we can all attest to the fact that people have kind of moved away from on-premises to a cloud-delivered email solution. And Office 365 and others. So when customers move towards a cloud-delivered solution, what are some of the characteristics that they need to think about from a security standpoint? And I have to assume that Microsoft pretty much holds the leadership in that market. So what are you observing from your clients and customer conversations on that front?
Yeah, I think any cloud migration, you have to start by planning it carefully. You need to see how is the attack surface changing. You know, when you've got a server on premise and you're protecting it with firewalls and things like that, you know, when you move to the cloud, where is the API access? I think the previous speakers were talking about your attack surface changes. So how are you going to understand that surface? How are you going to protect it? I think some things to consider, you know, security really starts with identity. Identity is the new perimeter, and you have to have strong identity. You have to have multi-factor authentication. You know, you want to plan everything, and then going back to the cyber insurance discussion, you want to make sure that you integrate the cloud platform into your tabletop exercises, red teaming, blue teaming, purple teaming, all of that. So, you know, it's a change, but a lot of the same principles apply.
Okay. So red teaming, blue teaming, making sure that we carry on some of the best practices that we had from on-premises to the cloud, and making sure we're thinking this holistically, right? Now, when we talk about the infrastructure moving to the cloud, let me maybe pivot a little bit from email and the services to the infrastructure most of the security operations team are used to, which is the SIEM. Traditionally, what happened was you had a whole bunch of infrastructure on premises, and then you would just put that into, 20 years back, it was a database, then it was a SIEM tool, and all the different fancy terms. But even those are now moving to the cloud too. Even the analytics and how you collect the data, how you do warehousing, et cetera. And I know Microsoft with Sentinel, you're making a push towards that, which is even getting the infrastructure to be cloud delivered. So it is not looking in terms of silos from email or from endpoint or from network, but bringing it all together into one coherent system. What I think the audience would be interested is, one, how practical is it? It kind of feels and hears nice and good, but how practical is it? And in terms of adoption, what are you seeing in the market?
Well, there's so many ways I could answer that question, and I think starting as a security analyst many years ago, you'd pull up the log files and you'd page down through the log files, and you're using your brain to look for things that don't seem quite right, and you're trying to join them together in your brain. And pretty obviously that's not scalable. So, one of the fastest growing markets is the XDR SIEM market. And what we're trying to do is pull all those signals together. We're trying to pull telemetry together and then apply threat intelligence. We want to see weak signals. We want to correlate them. And most of all, we don't want a lot of false positives. So I think this is where AI comes in. I mean, AI is automating human actions, human intelligence, but we also have to make sure we've got those right signals coming in. I personally think it is the future of security, that we, as we get all this telemetry, as we get all these signals. I was deeply involved in the SolarWinds discovery. I was at Mandiant when it happened. I remember when Kevin Mandia set up the weekend call, he said, "We've been hacked." And we didn't know what was going on, but a SIM tool was key in us understanding what was going on at that point. So, no matter what SIM you use, it's the future of where we're going, bringing that all together, applying the threat intel, using AI, and then obviously we want automation. We want to automate as much as we can, and then surface the things that we really need to look at. I want to make a really important point. SIM is a tool, and we have motivated human beings at the other end. Ultimately, we need, we need to respond to them, with people. We need security professionals, like expertise, working with technology, working with AI, working with software. That's the future of security.
Wonderful. And I knew that we would eventually get into AI. This conference, I'm sure every track that you get into, there's going to be some mention of AI into it. But what I wanted to get your perspectives, Phil, is where is the difference in terms of what is real and what is not real? And let's bring the scope towards maybe the conversation or the trend or the topic of this hour, which is around email communications, digital communications. I saw some stats that Microsoft analyzes over 1 trillion data points. Is that right? Or is it 1 billion data points?
24 trillion.
24 trillion. Okay, thanks for the data point there. So, what are the top 3 trends within AI that you feel strong about, where things were just not possible maybe like 3 years, 5 years back, but given that we are able to analyze data at scale, 24 trillion of them, what have you seen that has given you the aha moment?
You give me the tough questions today. I have to think about that one. The way I would answer it is, look, AI is a tool. And let me give you an analogy. Tesla does not say they have AI in their car. They have a self-driving car. So when we think about AI, it's a tool. It can't do miracles. But what it can do is process massive amounts of information, and it can look for patterns that a security analyst scrolling through a log can't find. So, I think, look, obviously we're a big player in AI. It's very, very important, but also we're a huge player in getting those, indications of compromise, of understanding what's going on in the dark web and feeding that into the system. So I think that's the best way for me to answer it. You can probably tell me more about AI and email in particular.
We are definitely, bullish about the capabilities that at least we are seeing in our interactions with our customers. So when we think about how we complement, and I'm going to be selfishly here promoting what we do here a little bit on Armor Blocks, is the context and the content that we are able to match in on. If you look at the what I would call the legacy way of looking at cybersecurity from a digital communications perspective, you had a historical database against which you compared an incoming email. But I think that for the very first time, we are able to get to a point where every one of the email that comes in, you can run those heuristics, analytics in real time to really pick out what is malicious or not. To me, that is just mind-blowing, right? And that's only possible when you have the right architecture, which is cloud native, and it's got deep AI models to support those. So I know it's kind of a narrow bandwidth in terms of where we think customers are really benefiting in terms of moving their security posture forward. And I can only imagine if you can solve this for one slither of the communication from email, what is possible when you also apply the same principles to the endpoint, to network, to the cloud apps, so on and so forth. So we are definitely bullish about it. And what I would definitely second is, for AI to work, you don't need just good data, you need data. You need both good and the bad data. And the fact that we are able to do that in a cloud-delivered architecture is just absolutely amazing. I want to maybe just conclude our quick talk here, looking at if you were to present to the CISO or the SecOps team in any company, mid, small, large enterprise companies, what are the 3 things that you're recommending that they take care of in the next 6 months, in the next 3 years?
Yeah, and let me add on to the last point before I answer that question, is that, and this is why exactly we have the Misa program, is that we can have Armor Blocks, who's a fantastic member of the program, innovating and adding value. And that's what we want, hundreds and thousands of partners doing this in every area. We have our own projects that we're working on. You're right, AI is everywhere. That's what we want to see happen. So thank you for being a Misa partner, and that's why I'm happy to be up here working with you and helping as much as we can. I think on the second thing, I think the things you would advise CISOs would change, but a lot of it stays the same. I think, first of all, attackers don't break in, they log in. And believe it or not, there are people that still don't have MFA deployed. And it was the Colonial Pipeline was a contractor's machine that didn't have MFA on it, I believe. And, so like, just do the basics, train your employees and, conduct best practices. And I'm a huge believer in red teaming, blue teaming, tabletop exercises. You have to continually be trying to break into your own system. You really do, because people will find the gaps. You can get too close to it. I think one of the first speakers said that you can get too close. So I think that's really important.
Wonderful. To recap, make sure that you have MFA turned on.
The basics.
The basics, right? Make sure that you have a well thought out training program for your employees. And 3, continuously test your security posture to make sure that you're breaking your own rules and policies.
Yeah, and there's an important point there. It's okay to fail a red team.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's not a bad thing. No one should lose their job. You get better. That's how you get better. And so sometimes there has to be a little bit of a mind shift about that.
Wonderful.
Maybe start with blue teaming and then go to red team.
And then go red team. Awesome, Phil. So again, we want to thank you for your time and sharing your observations and sharing your thoughts and perspectives. Definitely, we at Armor Blocks have been on the receiving end in terms of the partnership and the support from Microsoft. We definitely look forward to it and serving our joint customers together. Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you for being a Misa partner.
Absolutely.